Welcome to the Newswire with me, your host, Tyler Dickerhoof, joined by my producer, Alex. Alex is bundled up all warm and toasty in Florida. Who knew that Florida would get more snow in the month of January than we have here in Spokane,
Nuts.
Pacific Northwest? But we're actually supposed to get some here at the end of the week, next week.
I lost that bet. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you did. You did. The prop bet on that one really set you up. But today we're going to talk about President Trump's first 7 days in office. Man, there's so much to discuss, from energy, civil rights, DEI, immigration. We have the economy in general. Also, hey, we still remember we're talking about insurance with Florida and, health insurance, all those things. But hot news this morning. You just brought up with me about, this wasn't on my radar until you told me about AI. So let's jump into that one first. Go ahead, Alex.
So the focus of today is like the things that most Americans are fearful of today going into the new Trump regime. And we had energy, immigration, economics, which include tariffs, inflation, jobs, debt, DEI and civil rights, insurance, personal health. And then on my radar was also AI and this battle that is kind of, maybe like a Cold War scenario, because you heard Trump say massive.
What dropped today?
So DeepSeek AI is a Chinese developed AI software that's a competitor to ChatGPT. Just launched. If you pay attention to the markets, like NVIDIA dropped immensely today.
I know, because my son, who is starting to do a little bit of trading, my 16-year-old son's like, he was not feeling well, so he stayed home from school, and he's like, you got to buy NVIDIA. It's down. I'm like,
I'd wait. Yeah, I'd wait.
I mean, it's down 15%. It did have a bounce around 8:30. It's coming up a little bit, but
And the whole thing is, NVIDIA chips are like the premium chips on the market, right? And these chips are used, and they have the Blackwell chip that are going to be coming out, I think, later this year, to help with AI and the processing power and with quantum computing.
Yep.
And I guess the problem and why NVIDIA is dropping is that this Chinese built AI platform, DeepSeek, was built on much cheaper chips.
Oh.
And so they're going, you can have this really cool technology, but do it at a much
what are the chances? So it's funny. I sent you something the other day about conspiracy theory. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I forget exactly what it was. But one of the things that I had picked up is there are like energy terminals, transformers that are Chinese made, that have been held up in ports because of concern that they have spyware technology embedded in them.
I believe they're. So this is interesting. I have a friend who is I have a friend, actually. She's in the Trump cabinet. She's like pretty high up. And I was at her home over, maybe this was months ago, and installing some podcast gear. And the installers saw something in her home that was from China. It was like an audio equipment or Bluetooth technology. And they're like, that piece of technology is built in China and is known for having spy. What did you just say? Like spyware. She's like, holy shit. And I had no idea. And it was the first time was like, really? Like, yeah, I would take that out of your house right away, especially where you sit in that area. In politics
conversations. Oh my goodness. But let's get back to the topic at play. The first 7 days, at the inauguration, Donald Trump said, drill, baby, drill.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Proceeds to talk about energy. And, then it's a little bit of this, battle between some of our allied countries in regards to, who's going to invest here to help, drive some of this. We saw Japan say, hey, we might be interested. And then Saudi Arabia is like, hold my beer. We're going to just absolutely overshadow you. Here's the big part of that discussion is my belief. Everything economically in this country is driven by energy.
Yes.
And the more that we can get that to a place of affordability, both on, the the income side for energy participants,
Yeah.
and also the consumers, we're going to be able to affect all the other pieces from immigration to the economy to, all of that. There is a facet of energy involved.
Right.
And the more that we can, reduce our outlay to energy as a total expense, man, it's going to make us a more viable economy and country.
Yeah. Tyler, I think it's really important because I think the audience and a lot of people and me as well, when they think about energy, right?
Yeah.
The first thing I think people think about is just the cost of like gasoline or to heat their home.
Yeah.
How does energy have a massive impact on every single thing when it comes to just like when you mentioned immigration? Like, how do you
Yeah,
break that down?
you could boil it down so far. I would suggest you go watch the show Landman. It's a little shout out to Taylor Sheridan. I think
Landman.
they do an excellent job of kind of explaining a lot of these intricacies. And so, you think of the fuel for your car, maybe, some heating your house, natural gas, something like that. You think of those elements of
Right.
energy. But energy, petroleum, is used in so many consumer goods, including plastics, including, here's the other factor, every single product you consume that is natural, meaning it's cotton, it's wool, it is a food that you buy at the store. Energy was a absolute major component in that being at your home for you to use and or the production of it. Every single thing that is produced in this world is moved, transported by vehicles that consume energy in the form of diesel fuel, natural gas, plane fuel if it's on a plane. All of those is an energy quotient. So when you look at, for example, you want to say, hey, what's the latest thing that you bought at the grocery store? Just give me something.
Every day we're getting milk and eggs.
Okay,
and
so let's just stay with milk. All right, I know about that one really well, right? So, you may think, oh, what does energy have to do with the cost of milk? Well, if we go back all the way to the farm, they have to feed the cows something. Well,
Right.
if they're going to feed the cows, any type of forage, which is like a grass or that type of hay that they consume, all of that is planted by tractors that consume fuel. It is harvested by tractors that consume fuel. It is transported by trucks and tractors that consume fuel. It is delivered to the cow with implements that consume fuel. Then from the cow, you have her waste that is disposed of with implements that utilize fuel. You also have the the process of harvesting her milk. Well, that takes energy. Where does that energy come from? Well, that either comes from a production from a nuclear plant. It could be something else, but that's an energy, right? If it's not going to the capture of milk from cows, it's going somewhere else. Well, then the milk that's taken from the farm to the processing plant, that's again on a truck. And then at the processing plant, guess what? They have energy costs in order to process it. By the time it gets to the grocery store, you see this massive chain that fuel is a part of all of it. Much less, you could be buying a glass bottle, but say you're buying in a plastic jug, which is pretty standard, right?
Yeah.
How do you think that plastic jug got made? With petroleum, with energy. And so when you start to think about something that minuscule, like the consumption of that product, well, that's every single product, not just food, but say like your coat, your jacket, right? Say you bought that in the last 6 months. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, whatever. However it was made and or transported all the way through the chain to your house required fuel. Oh, I drive an electric vehicle. Well, I learned this from a recent podcast guest, Johannes, right? And he shared with us the big misnomer is people believe, oh, electric is free. All right, well, if you have solar panels, maybe, but those solar panels were transported by trucks that have, fuel. The people installed them drive trucks that have, fossil fuels. At the same point, a lot of the electric in this country is produced by natural gas, coal, like other types of fuel. So even for you to think that, oh, I drive electric. No, I mean, the tires.
Right.
Guess what those are made of? Petroleum.
Yeah.
Oil. So, I mean, energy has to do with so much that we could
Right.
not all of a sudden turn off and completely go away from fossil fuels without just living on the ground in a tent with nothing.
Yeah. So let me connect the dots real quick. So, like, over the past 4 years, right, the previous administration, we had mass inflation, right, over the last 4 years. The previous administration was against a lot of drilling and pipelines, which then caused energy costs to rise, which had an effect on everything else, like you mentioned. So then now Trump is all about drilling and opening up these pipelines again. How long does that take to take effect?
Well,
Right,
I mean,
where we'll see
that's one of the great questions, and I don't know. I mean, without being a energy expert, I don't entirely know, but I do know this from people that work in those industries, especially in like the Dakotas, where we saw a lot of drilling maybe 10, 12 years ago that, you know, the Dakota pipeline, you know, the pipeline from Canada that really changed the cost of energy in the US. A lot of them are very concerned and that, ooh, if we go and do this, we're going to have all this infrastructure that essentially is devalued, goes to zero. We lost our rear end in 2020 when, you know, the new administration said, you're out of business. And they had all of the infrastructure. So I'm not sure, but, you know, I think that's where seeing allied partners to be able to invest and to do things that really drive the affordability of energy production in the US. The last time Trump was in office, he really set out on, I want to make us as a country energy independent. And pretty much had done that within 4 years. Like, we were a net exporter, not an importer of energy at that point. And over the last 4 years, we have become tremendously dependent on foreign energy. And it's really kind of tipped the scales where we're now at the, you know, demand of the world market in energy instead of being one that sets that market. So it's a big deal that I think, you know, as you talk to people within the energy industry, this idea of that, oh, we can do away with all fossil fuels because that's better for the environment. I think, if anything, the last 4 years have said, whether people realize it or not, that's going to put us at tremendous worldwide disadvantage and make us extremely vulnerable to the economies of other countries as opposed to being economically independent. And so when it comes back to areas like immigration, well, that's where it starts to play out into the whole economy to say, hey, do we have enough stateside jobs to keep the people here employed? Or are we just constantly inflated trading dollars and we're not building any residual wealth for, you know, financial security?
Yeah, you know, the next thing that we can bring up is immigration, and obviously Trump has made a lot of changes to the policies. And
but here's what's amazing. Here's what's amazing. I saw some of these stats. He's just going back to what it was when he started.
Right, in 2000, was it 16?
And coming off the heels of, I think this is the stat, I might be a little bit off, but it's pretty close to this. During the Obama administration, he deported like an average of 1 million people a year.
Obama did.
Right. And Trump held serve through much of his term, maybe a little bit off. In the years of Biden, that dropped to just a couple 100,000.
Yeah. Well, they were bringing more people in than anything
else.
They're
just letting them in and not deporting them at all. And it's like, so really the commentary is like, oh, it's not, Trump isn't going to go like, oh my goodness, we've never seen this at all. He's actually going to go back to what it was where he was first in office, instead of saying, hey, instead of giving everyone a free lunch, no. There's a proper channel. If you need asylum, if you want to come to this country the right way, please. You know, we want you as citizens but we're not going to let you just come in on a whim and not hold you accountable to the processes we have.
there's a whole lot I want to say about immigration. I have friends and people that I like. They're my friends, but they post these things about this immigration policy and how only small percentage of people that have immigrated are actually committed a violent crime and this and that. And they kind of put this like blanket statement about what he's doing is like you're tearing apart families and none of these people are criminals. And then I'm thinking about, well, the problem is that so many people came in unchecked that there has to be a proper process put into place to get all the criminals that did that, which they actually have entered this country, and get them out. Like that needs to
that's
take
what
place.
some people don't realize is that the U.S. has had an immigration policy that if you're a felon, you're not allowed to immigrate here. And the same is if you're a felon, you're not allowed to immigrate to Canada.
Right.
It's just not possible. Like it isn't. And so that's pretty held throughout countries of that immigration issue. And what happened during the last 40 years is everyone walked away and just said, hey, it's a free for all. Right. And, while some people may think, oh, okay, they want something better. It's like, fine, but go through the proper channels, because if not, then all of a sudden it's chaos. And we've seen the chaos, that it's anarchy instead of being a controlled system. And I look at this, I have several friends who have come to the United States, naturalized citizens, gained citizenship. And I look at it from their perspective, say, all right, you've done the hard work. And it's hard work for some of them. It's a daunting task. It is difficult. There's a lot of limbo. Like you've gone through that. And how do you sit in regard to, people that are just willing to come and not do those, fact checks and all of the processes? Because to me, it's devalued what you did.
Right.
And I think that I haven't talked to it enough of them to understand, but my premise is that has to be very unnerving.
Right.
Because you're like, all right, wait a second here. There's a checks and balance for a reason. Let's hold on to that. I think one of the biggest pieces on immigration is we need to get back to a functioning system. Yeah. And we haven't had a functioning system. And I think that's the biggest difficulty is, it's like all of a sudden you never have a curfew. You get in trouble and your parents are like, bam, it's 11 o'clock. You're in bed no matter what. And you're like, all this hurts. I'm like, oh, no, all right. This is what it's been. I just need to go back to it. It's okay.
The other point that I wanted to bring up with the immigration is like around safety. And growing up in the early 90s, right? As a kid riding my bike around, parents both were working, we were pretty free to like run around the neighborhood, ride our bikes all over. I grew up about 15 minutes from Manhattan, where I grew up, in near the Giant Stadium, right in East Rutherford, New Jersey, right? And like as a kid growing up, it was safe. At least I thought. My parents really always, be aware, watch out, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward to now, right? In the news, you hear a lot about people getting killed and these horrible stories about migrants committing these crimes or these undocumented people. And I'm hearing from my mom, like, you got to watch out. And I'm so tired. What I'm trying to get to is it actually gotten more unsafe in this country? Or is that just the media planting fear in us? Like, do you have a take on that?
My take on it is the latter. And do I have any substantiation? No. Could it be we're on an upward trend from a downtrend? Yeah, probably. Here's the thing that I think of. When's the last time that we had and we saw in this country a mass serial killer like Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, someone like that?
Oh man, yeah, a long time. I mean, you have the school. That's a good. I think
it's now morphed into we have more school shootings.
Shooters, right?
If we go back to some of the work that Malcolm Gladwell has done, though, Malcolm Gladwell profiles and discusses in one of his books, and I can't remember. I don't know if it's Talking to Strangers or another one, and forgive me for not having the reference, where he talked about the suicide epidemic in Philippines. And it didn't exist until one day one kid committed suicide, and then it was put on news media and on the radio, TV, however it was. And then over a next 5-year period, it was non-existent. Over the next 5-year period, it became epidemic.
Right.
And one of the things that he points to is because you talk about it now, people look at it and like, oh, all right, becomes feasible. So when I think about some of these school shootings, I think it's very much that. It is people using it as a way to act out like all of the problems. And my kids have been a victim of school shooting. I've gone through that as a parent, and it's gut wrenching. And whenever we have a swatting or something like that, it's difficult, but it's also we're part of the problem. And we just have to accept that we don't have a great solution to the problem. The solution, in my opinion, is not lockdown gun. That's not the problem, right? It's kind of like I listened to this video this morning, and it was talking about during World War II. And they were talking about the planes that came back and landed. And they looked at these planes, and like the wings were all shot up and the tail was all shot up. And they're like, oh, we need to put things to reinforce the plane there because that's where it's getting shot. And somebody said, no, that's not the case. They're getting shot there. It's not taking them down. Let's reinforce the places that these planes that made it back don't have bullet holes, because probably the planes that didn't make it back got shot in those places. It's the inverse principle. And I think where we look at this is like, our homelessness issue. Adam Carolla had a great podcast about this recently. Yeah. He talked about homelessness. He goes, I'm homeless. Many people I know are homeless. You look at people all over California, Southern California, they're homeless. And he goes, did I sleep on the street last night? No. Do a lot of the people that I know, especially in working class communities, did they sleep on the streets? No. Because they had a network. They had friends. They had people take them in. And so when we look at the epidemic of homelessness, it usually isn't I'm without a home. It is coupled with a mental health, a drug, people have just addiction shut me out. Like I can't go there anymore. That's the problem. Not the fact that we don't have enough homes for them, not that we don't have enough money into the program, not that this or that. It's like, we've created Malcolm Gladwell in his latest book, Revenge of the Turning Point, talks about the opioid epidemic and how it began. And again, a lot of these factors, don't get mesmerized by the story and miss the root.
Yeah, and I agree.
I think, when we talk about immigration and we look at, I think this is happening right now with Trump to kind of transition. And I saw this last week, and it was talking about some of the DEI. It was talking about some of those factors and like, Trump's, going off on this person. And so I went and dug a little bit deeper. And the reality was, no, he didn't have much to say. He was just like, I didn't care for it, whatever. Right. He didn't lambaste the person. He didn't, downtrodden them. He just like, whatever. I mean, you can have your opinion. That's fine. Whatever. Yeah. And I think this misinformation of we want to create a story because news media is not getting clicks.
Right. It clicks.
Yeah. Is a major story in regard to the real problems with the economy, the real problems with DEI and civil rights, the real problem with insurance. I know I sent you this video the other day that I saw from a representative from Oklahoma. And he was sharing this story about, who are the underprivileged? Like, show me in the world where people are truly not given opportunity. He goes, right. I grew up in a trailer park. I had to absolutely work my butt off. I was told I would be nothing, had a physical disability, like would never be able to do anything. I went on and played college football. The opportunity is there for anyone willing to do the work. And just because maybe, don't have as much, just because you have a lot does not guarantee you anything in our country. And there's so many individuals that have accomplished tremendous amounts just because they did the work.
Yeah, there's like a stat, and I wish I had it, but there is a stat of like people that have been given large amounts of wealth, the amount of them that lose it is like above 50%.
Oh
Like a
yeah.
large amount of
Oh
people
yeah.
that are given that. So that's absolutely true. Like it's actually data driven approach. What I wanted to get to, and we kind of is the economics we had as like our third thing.
Yeah.
Economics, tariffs, and we talked about inflation, but jobs and debt. I believe we're in like $28 trillion in debt as a country. Or 29 trillion. I'm sorry, I was off by a trillion. But who's counting,
Just a
right?
rounding error.
you know, it is I think a big fear, and it's something that we have to be cognizant of. How it with this new Trump just announced the external revenue service
Yeah.
tariffs.
Yeah.
How do we get ourselves out of this, I guess, sinkhole of debt?
Well, I think we're seeing it play out in two ways. The first is, man, we have to reduce our outrageous expenditures in regards to energy. That's going to help everything from a country fiscal point of view. And then it's looking at it's like, all right, where are we being taken advantage of by other people? And I think that's where the external revenue service, that idea of we're going to go back to not being the free open market for everyone at our disadvantage. We're going to say, no, we have a viable consumer market here. And Mr. Producer, you're going to pay for it. And we're going to keep some of those profits in the US as opposed to allowing you to just fully capture our dollars. Because at any given point, there's actually more US dollars in circulation around the world than there are in the US.
Well,
it's crazy.
Do you think, I wanted to talk about this a little more about quantitative easing, right? Where it's basically a signal that there is like a major downtrend in the US like jobs market, like a lot of job losses economically, and they print money.
Yeah.
Do you think that could happen again in the near future?
I don't see Trump being one that would get behind that. In his original, you got to remember in 2020, he was, president when we had a lot of the PPP and those other dollars given out. Now, he wasn't in control of Congress at that point because it was bipartisan. So I don't really know exactly how that went on, but that's what went on. When you look at it as a difficulty of like, man, we need to manage our expenses, and we're going to manage our expenses by driving some demand, meaning we're going to help reduce energy costs. That's going to help fiscal ability of businesses. And then we're going to do things to drive internal demand, meaning tariffs, those type of tools tells me that we're going to look at a healthy way to quantitatively ease rather than doing it from a false economic. You pour money into the market, that doesn't fix your problem. It just is dollars trading hands, as opposed to you drive demand into a market. And so the money that's already there, if you can reduce costs and drive up demand, then you're going to have a healthier economy because the dollars are in circulation more than there is more dollars in circulation.
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah, no, I'm interested. Yeah, I don't know. I know that we have a Fed rate cut, coming up, or not cut, but a Fed meeting coming up, right?
Yep.
And Trump has signaled to him, what is his name again? The head of the Fed, to that he wants the rates cut. He wants, which Trump doesn't have any control. They're an independent entity. So I'm interested to see what happens there. But I do agree with you. I don't want us to print more money. I don't think we need it. I think there's other mechanisms and tools that he can use.
The interesting thing that could happen, and I wonder this, I believe, when we talk about jobs, when we talk about debt, when we talk about managing those, I personally don't believe dropping the federal rate would do anything to spur the economy. Could it help drive some additional businesses? Yeah, but I look at that as, federally, you can work around by giving rebates for certain industries. We've talked about energy. We've talked about those areas where I believe we really need to come to a static place to where we do a better job of managing some of these expenditures. However, allow people that are keeping money in an investment place to drive income so they're not speculating as much.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to help create a more stable economy rather than, hey, we drop interest rates another half a point. It doesn't change much to the commercial available rate, but it allows some of those, the greater games to be played as opposed to just hold things flat. Let's allow things to kind of settle out here as we move along in regard to the energy, from some of the jobs, from what's the effect of immigration. Allow those things to kind of play out rather than throw too many variables into it. And then all of a sudden you end up into a tailspin.
Well, I'm just looking this up now. Like there's a lot of articles, that Trump is demanding Jerome Powell. That's his name, Jerome Powell, the head of the central bank. Um, um, that he lower interest rates. Why would Trump want that?
Oh, I mean, the thing that what the benefit out of that would be is if you lower interest rates, businesses have a greater lending capacity. So if you're looking at this from I want to drive energy growth, I want to drive business growth. Hey, you lower interest rates, all of a sudden your cost of doing business as a company just dropped. That is a good thing. Like I don't disagree with that, but I look at it as a factor on the consumer side where, man, we just kind of need to let this play out. But we'll see what happens. I have zero, don't play in that market. So it's just kind of, that's just my off the cuff speculation.
The next topic I want to go into, which I know we've discussed this a bunch on the show before, but is DEI, civil rights, and I think a lot of this like cancel culture that has been going on for so long. I mean, really prominent over the last 4 years, and just recently in the news today was I think it was like 8,000 soldiers who were terminated from the army. From different areas because they refused to get the COVID shot, have now been paid for all the back pay that they've been owed and reinstated. What's your take on that? This whole new movement, pendulum swing. We've mentioned this before. Back into, hey, let's do the common sense, right things, just because someone has a certain take.
The biggest thing that I take out of it is there's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear being driven. I saw this and it was great. It was, if you hold this concept, a lot of the organizations that have been set up, nonprofits as DEI, civil rights, special interest movements, once that gets accomplished, what do they move on to next? All of a sudden you have say your organization is all about creating DEI standards within the state. Well, once that gets accomplished, you're like, well, what do we do now? Do we go into DEI education, or what's the next fight to fight? And so when you hear that, it makes you stop and think, okay, that's plausible, but what's the bigger story there? Is if we don't have a story to tell, our voice becomes silent. So we have to have a new story to tell all the time. And I believe that's what's really gone on in a lot of these DEI concerns, the civil rights. It's like, oh, they're taking it away, so it's got to be a problem. Like,
right.
Is it? Or are you creating a story that's not there in order to have something to say? Because I think as you talk to most people, as I look at advisors, DEI in a lot of organizations was handled incorrectly, in the idea that it caused as many problems as it did any solutions. Meaning it made people feel like they were wrong simply because they were not part of the DEI quotient. And there was a quotient, right? And I think that's where we need to retract and say, ooh, okay, we learned a lot through that process. The civil rights, all of those acts have not been repealed. They're still in place. There's still all of that. But this advent of DEI, kind of mandates that we've seen the last 4 or 5, how many ever years, okay, we went about it maybe in a way that was less than ideal. And I think when you talk to DEI experts that really pull themselves back and understand what's happened in organizations, the ones that I talk to realize, yeah, we didn't go about it the right way. As Gil Lynch, who has been a guest on the podcast a couple times,
Yeah.
he shares in his opinion of DEI. It's like, you all of a sudden decided you own a bar, a restaurant, right? And your bouncer only allows certain people in, right? Pretty standard. Yeah. Most of the times at bars, it's good looking women. Let's be honest. The guy's got to pay. It's good looking, right? Yeah. And his point is, you can't tell the bouncer, hey, start letting in different people. No, that's still exclusionary. You got to tell the bouncer, hey, buddy, you're no longer a bouncer. Your job is security. That's all you do, is just make sure whoever comes in is safe. That's your job. And if you want to come to our restaurant, our bar, our institution, man, we're glad to have you. If you fit the values, perfect. You're going to love it here. If you don't, well, you can walk out the door. It's okay. And I think that's where, to take someone who's built such a tremendous organization with that ideology and be able to profess that across more organizations, is you're not there to mandate that certain individuals have a role just so they feel valued and justified that, oh, when I go on a call, somebody's going to look like me. I want someone that can do the job. I don't care what they look like. That's where I believe our world is. And yet we have people that are trying to twist the DEI conversation. Is I need to be able to go to, a certain institution and someone's going to look like me. Well, if I said I need to go to the doctor and they have to be a middle-aged white man in order that I feel okay, I'm probably going to get shitty service. Let's just be honest. Because if they are justified for that, that's not a good justification. They could be phenomenal, or they could be like the doctor that told me when I went visit them, you're healthier than me. I can't do anything for you. It's not why I'm here, buddy.
Not why I'm here, buddy. So I had a chiropractor like that.
Yeah, and again, to me, that's it's a bad rationale to use on one extreme, just as well as it's a bad rationale for me to use. I only want a service provider that looks like me so I feel comfortable. I'm like, if I said that, man, I would be canceled in a hot second.
Yeah. There was I want to find it. There was a recent article about Caitlin Clark. I don't know if you saw this. It was, she had gotten punched in the face.
Oh, did you send that to me? I was trying to find where it came from. I remember seeing it, but I didn't remember how I saw it, but, go ahead.
I'm trying to find the article too. I wanted to pull it up because I wanted to make sure I had it down, but and I had read it.
Here it is.
Poked in the right eye by Dejona Carrington during a game last season, and she was left in the eye with it bruised. And if you want to take it, it felt intentional. Even though they said it was unintentional. But then there was this whole debate about it just recently with Riley. What was her name?
Riley Gaines. Yeah, so go ahead.
And she is Riley Gaines was a former swimmer. I want to say she was Olympian.
Kentucky.
And now she's like an activist and, political.
She was the one who lost to Leah Thomas, who was kind of the first person in major NCAA sports who was transgender, who had competed as a male previously in NCAA swimming, went through a gender transformation, came back to swim as a female, and won the NCAA swimming several years ago. And this is when it kind of like all came to a major point, is because of how bad it was.
Yeah, and this woman that had punched Caitlin Clark in the eye was wearing a shirt that said F Donald Trump tour. Like she was obviously clearly on the more liberal side, which is fine. And then had this shirt and that said F Donald Trump and all this stuff. And then I think it was I'm just reading through the article. Caitlin Clark's role in the WNBA by poking her in the face, and then so you're telling me the same girl who deliberately gouged Caitlin Clark in the eye, then laughed about it, is also wore a hoodie that said "F Donald Trump," and then Carrington said that she didn't intentionally poke Clark in the eye, and she basically is having this critique on her, and then like LeBron James gets invited into the conversation. Yeah, and it was just it seemed like a very one sided take on the girl that hit her in the face for wearing this shirt. Um, I'm going through here. And then she tears into her, going back.
I think here is the point is we've often seen this happen and it needs to be corrected is we've
Oh, here it
embraced
is.
reversed racism
Yeah,
in
white
order
privilege in
to
WA is literally hilarious. Maybe you
yeah,
like Sunny Hostin, I think. Yeah,
yeah,
it
I
was.
mean and that's where part of this conversation really stems and I think this is one of the difficulties and again I see the world that I see and I can't claim to have lived in the world that other people of different races, different genders live in. I
Yeah,
can't, but I know living in the world that I live in as a middle aged white male, that oftentimes in the last 8 to 10 years, right, wrong, or indifferent, I feel a lot of society has said, you're the problem. And I think that is just as egregious as someone thinking of another race that they're a problem. That's the problem. Meaning, we can't go
yeah,
around and point at, oh, this or that. It's like, no, we have to get back to understanding all people are made with value and let's appreciate that value. And we can't allow a one side to go rampant, pointing fingers and blaming just as much as the other. And I think that's where we're at today, trying to rectify it, whether it's cancel culture. I think one of the best things, I think one of the best things to that can happen is for more comedians to feel like they can just roll with it. We
yeah.
need more Dave Chappelle's to say what Dave Chappelle says because
Agreed.
Dave Chappelle will hit it all right on the chin.
Yeah.
I enjoy his show. I enjoy his comedy. I think it is very apropos in regards to he will make fun of both sides.
Yeah, he does.
I
And the
mean,
last thing, because I know we're kind of running out of time here, is the last thing I wanted to go over, and then kind of get your kind of future take is insurance, whether it's home insurance, personal health insurance. There was the assassination of the CEO of United Health, right? I believe.
yep, United
Um,
Healthcare.
and so, like, where do we go as a society with all the kind of things that have unfolded from the wildfires? We know that they certain insurance is pulled out
Yeah.
for a variety of reasons. There's problems in North Carolina from that hurricane. Florida, there's a lot of insurance problems. There's a lot of health insurance costs are at all-time highs. I think what happens next in this
Well, I
landscape.
think it's going to continue to be a story, and it's going to be a story that takes months to play out.
Yeah,
Meaning, as we see more of these incidences, the one thing that I think, take this for, for what it's worth. If we had gone through the United Healthcare situation, and that was the only story about insurance as a general industry that we had to deal with this year, the impending trial, all the other, kind of back and forth people sharing their woes and difficulties with insurance, that'd be one thing. But then quickly, within a matter of weeks, we have the cancellation of fire protection for Southern Californians. And
yeah,
I've shared this, and as difficult it is, and understanding if I was in the situation, it would suck, and I don't think I would have this rationale. But I also understand, hey, those companies pulled the insurance because they knew their risk was higher than their potential financial reward as a company. And
yeah,
having a friend who used to work with Allstate in particular, and he shared that, yeah, I mean, and Allstate was one of the companies whose revenues were actually negative in 2024. That some of these companies are saying, "Oh, we need to really address how we're, handling things." I think in regards to payouts, in regards to how we handle premiums, I the conversation's not going to slow down.
yeah.
And I think we're going to probably see in some point in the next couple years some type of reform in the industry.
I
Is it
agree.
going to be effective? Who knows. But is there going to be some type of demanded reform? Yes, because I think there's going to be way too many constituents that go to their public representatives, Congress, to Senate to House of Representatives, both in state and national, and saying this is a problem, and it's going to force more of them to really say, "Ooh, we need to look at this." Mm-hmm. Now the challenge is going to be whose money wins. Is it the lobby money from those insurance companies that wins, or is it going to be the potential money from the constituents and the fear of, oh, I might not get reelected? And I think that's going to probably, as I'm just saying it right now, it probably picks up fervor in the next year and a half, but it might be one of those points that really, really affects the midterm election in 2026. It could really be one of those points that, again, if it gets to the political, the voting policy, politics, it could be impactful.
I wanted to end with this. I looked this up. This was a study that's done every year by Chapman University of the things that Americans are most feared for. And this is like their top 10. The number one was corrupt government officials. Number two was losing a loved one, which I think is number one. Cyber terrorism. Then it was Russia using nuclear weapons. It was very specific. And then not having enough money for the future. U.S. becoming involved in another world war. North Korea using nuclear weapons. A terrorist attack, and biological warfare.
I think there's a lot of warfare concerns there. Let's be honest.
Most of it.
Probably war, the biggest thing.
Sum it up.
War. Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for being here. Remember to hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications if you're watching on YouTube. If you're joining us on LinkedIn, thanks for being here. I'd love to know from you. What did you gather from today's conversation, or what are your thoughts about what the first week in Trump's presidency is from regards to the economy, immigration, energy, DI, civil rights, and of course, insurance? I'd love to get your take on it as we continue this conversation. Till next time, choose to lead with impact.